One musical example I would like to consider in connection to this, and in the course of this chapter, is the brace in bar 6 of Beethoven's Tempest Sonata, Opus 31, number 2. It is introduced after a dotted G sharp, and Beethoven's tempo indication is adagio. Immediately one can consult Bach's writing out of the brace in the adagio tempo. The misunderstanding of this bar, its incorrect performance and interpretation, is standard with the roll of honour and in Lilliput. The brace will be performed slowly, already at odds with Bach saying the majority of time it is played quickly, and as 4 equal notes. And the following 16th notes, or semiquavers, the B natural and A, as Lilliput will play them, will be much too long. Remember when I said not only will they get the ornament wrong, but that which comes before and after. By the way, Lilliput, the pampered ears, will understand that the beauty of the performance of this passage of slow notes is to be found in their slowness, and in how even the roll of honour can keep the noise level while doing it, without missing notes. The wrongness of the lengths they give the B and A semiquavers can be determined when one considers that the following minim or half note will take up more than 8 such notes because of the fermata. And if one, instead of counting, because counting doesn't work, counting is flat, music isn't. This relates to my calling music four-dimensional sound. This will relate to elements of Einstein's theory of relativity. And I'll just read some sentences, because just to kind of give something to me calling music four-dimensional sound. So I'll give something, and this is for anybody, anybody who might be interested about such things. I'm not going to spend time talking about it, maybe some other time. But it's along of an idea that the metronome or counting is going flat, whereas the music that you'll play in the world of music, it might begin and end at the same point as the counting or the metronome begins and ends, but instead of it moving along on a flat plane, it's moving along a curved plane. So you can see how the divisions they won't coincide. So, with some of the sentences regarding Einstein's theory of relativity, like the idea that time flows differently according to the state of motion, that space and time change in a moving body. So, and another sentence is, to make the speed of light constant, the theory requires that space and time change in a moving body according to its speed as seen by an outside observer. The body becomes shorter along its direction of motion. That is, its length contracts. Time intervals become longer, meaning that time runs more slowly in a moving body. That is, time dilates. Music, in the world of music, bends time. Not the note playing that exists in the cage, but music. I say that in all seriousness. I'm not, being a nutcase or facetious or just, trying to be out there. I say it to be considered with a sense or inkling of its potential significance. So you don't have to consider it if you don't want, but I would mean it in that it could be considered. And it is this time bending that makes the music in the world of music four-dimensional. Its four-dimensionality, its time bending, can be noticed in the silence of the pauses or at the end of the pieces I play. You may have heard it said about, playing the rests. And I'll say this to inform, that doesn't happen for kissing, but it happens for me every single time. Sometimes it might happen for kissing, but generally when he stops playing, there's flatness. Because he's not in the world of music fully. But with me, when I stop playing, there is no flatness. And that's a phenomenon, what is taking place there. And it will happen for you too, if you try what I'm sharing. So from what I've already shared, there's enough there for you to be able to have that in your own playing. There's enough there of what I've already uploaded that you can start experiencing that in your own playing. That phenomenon every single time. And I'll tell you, it's a unique and powerful experience, and it never gets old. It feels as good. It felt as good yesterday as it did the first time it happened, and it happens every single time. And I'm telling you, it's if only for that you were to try and discover what I am sharing, I guarantee you will consider it worth it. So that's why the metronome doesn't work. End of the line, final conclusion. When it's examined with all the insight, the metronome doesn't work, flat out doesn't work. Neither does counting. And if you think of that in terms of the theory of relativity, because a lot of that theory, like those sentences, it was all about, a person in a train as opposed to a person standing stationary observing that train. Counting and the metronome, they are both stationary. They're flat. While the body making music is in motion. So you have a stationary object and the body making music is in motion. Neither of them will ever coincide. It's impossible to measure the time of music which when you're making music, when it's music from the world of music, that is bending time. A metronome cannot measure that time. It's impossible. And you know, like I would be interested, like I think, you know, I don't know science, but I know it's a phenomenon, what's going on. And so I would be happy for a scientist to consider that, but not a Lilliput scientist. Not not an arrogant that's ruled by arrogance, but a, the meek. And I'll just say this, that blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What stops a person being meek? Arrogance. Remove arrogance and you become meek. The meek will not approach things with a sense of their own importance, knowing, quick to dismiss, but rather with humility, awe and wonder. And the meek as well will not approach things with tolerance or, being magnanimous. The meek will, they won't think of themselves in it. They'll just be, regarding the stuff with humility, awe and wonder. And it has always been the meek who've discovered the secrets of the planet. It's always those people who are looking. They're the ones who discover the secrets of the planets, not the people who already know it all and shut everything out. It has always been the meek. That they will inherit the earth can be another way of saying they will discover the planet's secrets. Music is one of those secrets the planet has to give to us. Just as we are a product of the planet, which itself is a product of the universe, so too is music. We grew from the planet. We are the planet. Inheriting the earth is discovering the planet's secrets. Music is one of those secrets. So when I say music is four-dimensional, that music bends time, we are talking about one of the secrets the planet has. So, and I think it can be considered in that bigger picture. So, if counting were to work, it can't be flat. It would have to be a musical counting. So, and I wrote here, there's a video, a new gimmick for Lilliput hacks. Something they could run away with, musical counting. So you could imagine people building their lessons. They're anyway on YouTube, all these tutorials, they're anyway so starved for, topics and stuff. They're regurgitating, rehashing the same old stuff over and over again, all the time. So there's one they can have, and it just that can be an example of what it's like in the cage. They're crumbs. You can throw crumbs to the cage, and they'll feast on them. So musical counting, they could go off and a whole thing about musical counting. But I'll say the music is curved, counting is flat. The counting would have to be curved too. Beginning and ending at the same point, but following the same curve as the music follows. Music doesn't go through time in a straight direction. It goes through time in a curved direction. We are experiencing the fourth dimension of sound in those, that when I end the piece and you feel that, and it's there, I'm not waiting for you to validate me or say it is or not. say it's there, and it doesn't matter if nobody agrees with me, it is there. And what you were experiencing there is the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension exists. We just don't know about it. And you know, they say in science that it only exists on a speed of light level, but that's not true. It exists. Music is the key to experiencing it on an ordinary level. Its existence, its presence around us. So, counting doesn't work. So how do we determine the wrongness of the lengths they give the B and A? By considering the length of the following minim or half note. So how do you do that? So instead of counting doesn't work. Why does it not work? Because Lilliput, the roll of honor, they can't get basic rhythms right. They can't hold notes for their proper length of time. Kissin can't do it, Sokolov can't do it, none of them can do it. And I just named those two not because I want to pick on them, but they represent the very top tier of the roll of honor. And so everybody underneath that, you could name any of them. They all belong. You can all slot them in. None of them. 4/4 time. If there's a minim or a half note in 4/4 time, they're not able to hold it for its proper length. It's all over the place. It's ubiquitous. It's ridiculous. It annoys me that I'd have to be saying it. It annoys me that it's not known. And it annoys me that those same people who don't notice it, who don't know it, are all professing to be experts, to be geniuses, to be whatever it is. And where are you all when it comes to spotting the errors? It seems like there's nobody spotting the errors. But, so, counting doesn't work because all these people are counting, yet they are not able to spot the errors that are everywhere, that are so obvious to somebody, you know, like me. It's like a slap in the face. It's so annoying. It's also, I remember a friend when I was a kid and talking about mistakes he noticed in, you know, like in Gershwin, Rhapsody in Blue, the semi-quaver triplet things, and he was saying there it's not performed correctly, and you know, and I'll bet there's you know, young people around who do notice things and say that's not right, and it all falls on deaf ears. Nobody will acknowledge it because nobody thinks there's a problem there, and they're left alone with those suspicions, and they might either become subservient or whatever you'd call it, and just fit in and forget about those instincts, learn to ignore them and become a grown-up, a sheep like all the others. Or they're just, you know, they're just forgotten about or ignored. So instead of counting, in order to realize that because of how long they're playing those 16th notes, that the note following has to be longer than they're playing it. Instead of counting, if one sings to oneself in one's head 8 such notes, the B and A, exactly as they were just performed, while holding down the A major chord, one will see how ridiculously long that A chord needs to be held in order for the preceding 16 notes to be correct in length, and actual 16th notes. You might say interpretation is a lot about choice and personal preference. Well, if interpretation is a matter of choice, of personal preference, and the roll of honour are not wrong to play or teach those notes like they do, then their failure to hold the following A major chord for its proper length, a length they themselves chose in their choosing of how they performed the preceding 16th notes, then it serves as an example of what I say about the cage and their existing only notes without consequence, where nothing is of consequence, where it doesn't matter that the 16th notes were so long, because we're not going to bother giving the A major chord its proper length. And nobody is put out, because nobody is aware of the properties of actual music, so they lament or notice their absence as little as they appreciate their presence. As long as there are no surprises and it sounds exactly the same as everyone else, then the bobbleheads will start nodding. But they don't have to nod. They are in a position to think for themselves, to say, hold on a second, this isn't right. But they're just nodding. Whatever they hear. You know, if it's a masterclass, they sit in the piano stool looking at the piano. The masterclass giver, that Lilliput midget, will be spewing his propaganda, his nonsense. And the person at the piano is just nodding away. It's all, nothing is of consequence in the cage. You know, you'll hear Lilliput people tell you at the opening of that one spreads the chord and lands on the, you know, that the last note of that spread A major chord lands on the first beat of the bar. They don't have to think, where does that time go that spread chord takes up? Where does that time go? If you think of it going to the end of the exposition and repeating it, that spread chord will have to take time from the preceding note. So that means that has to be shortened. Will Lilliput shorten it? Those who make the decision to spread the chord and land on the first beat of the bar, will they shorten that note before that accordingly, so that spread chord takes up the time? No, they won't. What they'll do is they'll play the last note of that exposition, they'll spread the chord, and then they'll start again. And because there's no consequence, they're not playing music at all. It's just notes, it's just noise control. They have no conception of a pulse. None. Their music does not bend time. Mine does, theirs doesn't. And you can hear it. Anybody, you know, the whole idea of rubato, of robbing time and paying it back, doesn't work on Lilliput, because Lilliput have no conception of paying it back. They don't say, oops, hold on a second, if we play these 16 notes too long, how long will that note afterwards have to be? For Lilliput, for the roll of honour, and I'm talking about the top people in the roll of honour, the exclusive people giving masterclasses for universities like Juilliard and stuff. It doesn't matter. Who cares how long the following note is? Who cares about any of it? We can do what we like, because, you know, it's the same. You can judge for yourself all this, how you identify and stuff, as if it has nothing to do with reality, as if the laws of nature don't play in. You can maybe examine it in terms of its ridiculousness and how it doesn't survive. If you identify as being able to fly and jump off a cliff, see how much reality cares about how what your personal truth is. See how much the laws of nature, the laws of physics care that your personal truth is that you can fly. The contradictions of the role of honor is also evident, where their actions speak louder than their words. On the one hand, they'll be all falling over themselves to call Beethoven a genius. On the other hand, through their actions, they show that they don't think Beethoven able to properly notate his compositions. Because the proper notation of how Lilliput performs that passage would require Beethoven to have notated that last chord as a quarter note or even an eighth note in value. But it doesn't matter because it's all notes without consequence. None of them mean anything in the cage. So, that's the first I'll mention about this passage. But there'll be more aspects of it to look at based on what Bach is going to say in later paragraphs. So, the two things you can think of Bach's writing out of the brace in Adagio, and think of how it's generally performed and the length of those 16th notes, and you can examine it for yourself, work out for yourself and think, do they hold that following chord long enough to make those 16th notes? You can't decide what they are. They either are something or not. You can't say they're 16th notes. If you want them to be 16th notes, you have to make them 16th notes. They can't be 16th notes in your head in that moment, and then in the next bar, it is something totally different, or in that very same bar follows something entirely different. And that A major chord at the end of that bar, the second half of that bar, that has a fermata over it. That means it should, that means their error is doubled. So those are the two things. There'll be more aspects in how to consider that passage then in the paragraphs to come, and I'll bring that up. So when you see in figure 50, when you see there the presto brace, and Bach, he provides the fingering of how you'd play it with 4 fingers. And so I want to add to that using AC fingering, you would use your 5th finger instead of the 4th finger on the A. Otherwise, it's identical. And as well, using 4 fingers and the advantages of ending the brace with the thumb as opposed to the 3rd finger to accommodate a directly ensuing leap, I would say makes sense. because if you have to jump up an octave and you end the brace with your third finger, well, you're going to have to take a jump. You won't be able to stretch. Whereas if you end the brace with your thumb, you're better able to navigate that octave leap. So it makes sense. And you will find yourself doing this often. So you might already, obviously, notice that or be doing that, but you'll find that you'll be playing the braces with 4 fingers often. And yeah. And with the appendix, if you look at the written out example that Bach provides with the appendix, where he's talking about the accidental being on the left or right hand side. In the German, they just say left hand or right hand. So the English will be left hand side, right hand side. He doesn't say the side in the German, he just says left or right hand. So that the accidental will be on the right or left hand, depending on if the accidental comes sooner or later in the brace. So I just want to say, one of the things you can deduce when you look at that example in the appendix, one can deduce that Bach here is presenting notes in adagio to illustrate. You can tell that by how he writes out how the brace is to be performed. So that will be an example of, how you're looking deeper, or in knowing what the information Bach is sharing, the insight Bach is sharing, you can read deeper into in the score. So just on that, without Bach saying it's adagio, you can see from what you've learned, from what you've paid attention to, that Bach has an adagio note in mind when he wrote that. So it's information that's not actually specifically there, but that you will have when you see it. So I just mentioned that as an example of that. And that is going to be, when you look at the score at the end of all this, it won't be the same score that anybody in the Roll of Honor or in Lilliput is looking at. You are going to read into it deeply. You are going to find yourself, when I say, Lilliput and the Roll of Honor are functioning illiterates, at the end, if we could get to the end of all this, you will realize that you have become literate, and you will realize that me calling them functioning illiterates was not an insult or a slight, but in fact an accurate description of how it is. And everything I say is an accurate description of how it is. It's not an attack. What makes it so incomprehensible or something is just how you won't have any idea just in what state the cage actually is, what state Lilliput it is. And all the things that are meant to be amazing are actually normal. It's just that the cage weakens people so much that they become just, totally inept. And then the things that are normal or that come naturally seem like they're superhuman acts. And with regard to what Bach said about the accidentals coming before or after, and one can see in the last example of 67C, for example, that the B flat accidental is written on the left hand side over the sign, since the B flat is the first note of the ornament. So that's just an example of that. And then with the 2 numbers of the digits, what could the ambiguity be? And with the 2 numbers there, Bach says in that first chapter that it'll be indicated by 2 numbers or 2 digits. And you can see the two numbers he writes in then in that example of there's the sign going vertical, the squiggly line, the turning line going up vertical, and underneath are the numbers 3 and 1. And you can see those are the two fingers that are on the principal note. So while the turn, so the note and the first finger that plays the first G is the third finger, and the second one is the thumb. So that's what the numbers. And so when he's saying he chose the first version, and I would say he's choosing that first sign, the sign lying out horizontal, to avoid ambiguity. And so, first of all, what could that ambiguity be? And I thought perhaps Bach might have been thinking of, like, let's say, figured bass, and that would be confusing, that they mistake the numbers for maybe having something to do with the figured bass. Or perhaps, though, it's so the numbers are not mistaken as being the fingering for the beginning and end of the brace when the sign is lying flat. But it could be that the numbers go with the sign that's standing up vertical, and that Bach chose the other sign that doesn't have the numbers going with it. And you find, I found in all the examples that follow, he doesn't have those two such numbers. So that could be what he's saying. He's choosing the first one because the two numbers don't come with that, and and with the two numbers not being there, it avoids all sort of confusion or ambiguity regarding those numbers. So for the second bit of irony, I find it kind of ironic that, like, the sentence that's there to clear up the ambiguity provides itself ambiguities. So I don't entirely get that sentence, but since he's not talking about the actual substance, music substance, with regards to that, I figure it's not that tragic. So that's it. There was a bit of an exposition to do there before I got into that with the calling the turn the brace, and I don't know, it fits. It's a better term for that ornament, brace. Turn is ridiculous, and I don't know if I should say that. I mean, the typical YouTube thing would be to say, let me know in the comments what you think of the term brace. You don't have to, but if you did have an opinion of how you like the term brace, I would be interested to hear that. But if I ever refer to it in English, I shall always refer to it as the brace. And that's a difficulty with the cage in the world of music, is you're going to have the vocabulary doesn't stay the same. When you're in the world of music, you'll find the vocabulary of the cage doesn't work, and that's the problem here with Lilliput translated the book title as being The True Art of Playing Keyboard Instruments, and that's an incorrect translation. And and for the algorithm are being found, I'm immediately, not being in the cage immediately alienates me, because I have to use different vocabulary than people recognize, and that's annoying. But it's like the orca in captivity and the orca in the wild. They're not going to use the same vocabulary. The orca in captivity is not going to understand the orca in the wild. And as well, let's say the orca in the wild was to think, see the fin on the orca in captivity drooped over and its bad skin and all that. And let's say the orca in the wild was to think that orca was repulsive and wouldn't want anything to do with it, would go, ugh, what's wrong with that? Us as an outside observer and not getting personally, emotionally involved, or when we can see it objectively. Let's say the orca in captivity was feeling bad, that the orca in the wild was so repulsed, we would be able to, as outside observers, explain to that orca in the captivity. Those who might see that, yeah, it's not right to keep an orca in captivity, we could say to that orca in captivity, it's not you that repulses the wild orca, it's what captivity has done to you that repulses the wild orca. And if you were in the wild, you would have none of those things, but you can't, and then you'd be saying to that but you're mistaken what the cage does to you as being you, but it's not you. It's the results of the cage, and they are repulsive. But if you escape the cage, all those things that you thought made you as a person, that you identified with yourself, like let's say your rhythm is awful or something, or I don't know, or that you get stiff, like you tense up, you seize up when you try to play things. You might think that's you. You were born with those things, but it's not. They are the effects of the cage, and when you leave the cage, they'll all go away. And when it comes to the orca, we could explain that to the orca and we'd know exactly what we mean. And we think the orca shouldn't be feeling personally bad about the wild orca being repulsive. The orca should feel the same way about the effects of the cage, the effects of captivity, and feel what, how unjustly, that he's a magnificent, powerful creature in the wild and he's been reduced to that in the cage. And so that is how, when I talk about the cage, it would be possible to think of it like that, not in a personal way, but look what the cage has done to me, and look what I could be if I'm not in the cage. Yeah, so in the next group of videos, I'll I won't need to, I can get straight into it. And I'm breaking it up because, in order to feed the algorithm and stuff, I can't prepare and record and do all that in a week. I need a certain amount of time. And so if I uploaded this as one big long video, it means, longer spaces where I can't upload anything. And according to how the algorithm works, I might as well forget it. I might as well just quit trying at all. But I don't want to quit trying. So that's why you're going to get these in pieces. If I want to hope to, grow or reach more viewers. So, but on the other hand, it doesn't matter if nobody watches this, if nobody cares. It doesn't change the value of what it is I'm doing. So it's not dependent on you. You can help. You can help get this seen or not, but it doesn't affect the value of it. So, thanks. Bye.